Hello everyone! As we start out in your criminal justice documentation course, we're going to focus on police reports and writing in a clear and concise manner. At about this point in the course, you might be asking yourself, why is it important for me to write well? Why is it important, if I want to be a police officer, for me to understand grammar and punctuation and spelling and all these other things? The simple answer is that as a law enforcement officer, you are a professional. You're representing your office, and you are the face of your office for the community. You're expected as a professional to be able to express yourself well, both verbally and in writing. In many instances, the successful prosecution of your arrestee could hinge on how well written your narrative report was. That's why you need to have detail and clarity in your report, and it needs to be written well with proper grammar and punctuation so that anybody who reads it can understand the points you are trying to convey. There are some simple tips that you can keep in mind that will ensure that you have a good, well-written police report. The first thing to remember is to always write in chronological order. In other words, start at the beginning. Don't start at the end and then go back to the beginning and fill in the middle. This makes sense, right? Second of all, you should be writing in first person past tense. This is a very common error that I see in this course. Instead of saying, I arrived at the scene and walked up to the victim, a lot of times a student will say, this officer arrived at the scene and proceeded to walk up to the victim. You are the officer that responded to the scene, therefore you always should use first person. Also, I see students say things like, I get out of my car, I walk up to the scene, I see a person lying on the ground. That is present tense, and that is not the proper way to write a police report. Again, using past tense, first person, you would say, I arrived at the scene, I got out of my car, and approached the victim. Include only facts, not opinions or your hypothesis of what occurred. This is very important. Your written police report is a factual record that is going to be read not only by your supervisors and other officers working on the case, but by the attorneys working the case and perhaps the judge in court. You don't want to add in your opinion or your hypothesis at this point. You want to just merely state what happened and include the who, what, when, where, why, and how if you know it. Another tip is to explain in very direct wording what occurred. You don't need to be flowery. This is not creative writing. Again, just the facts. Just provide the facts. You don't need to make it sound pretty. Be succinct. This is my favorite one, and the one that I see people run afoul of very frequently. What does it mean to be succinct? What that means is, if you can say it in 5 words, don't say it in 23. After you finish writing, the first few times you practice this, you should go back and read through what you wrote and eliminate any unnecessary words. That will make your writing very succinct. If it's brief, it's clear and direct, and that's what you're seeking. The last point is for you to use perfect grammar and punctuation. And I mean perfect. You should have no mistakes. This requires you to proofread. You might also have someone proofread for you if you know that this is an area that you have trouble with. Again, you are a professional representing your department to the public, and as a professional, you are expected to be able to write well and, quite honestly, to write perfectly. I want to go back for a minute and address the question, what use is made of police reports? Why is it important for us to do this? I actually touched on this a little bit in the previous slide, and the answer is that your report as a law enforcement officer creates a permanent factual record of what occurred at the scene. I want you to key into 2 words there, permanent and factual. First, permanent. This is a permanent record, and long after your involvement in the case ceases, your notes and your police report will remain a part of the record of the case. It will be used at trial in court, and it will continue to be used if there are any appeals, and it will continue to stay in the case file as an actual record in the case long after the case is resolved. Now key on to the word factual. Again, I covered this before, but it bears repeating because it's a very important point. Your police report needs to contain the facts and just the facts. Do not include your opinion, your hypothesis, a suggestion, anything along those lines. It should just be straight facts. Police reports are used by you and your fellow officers as you proceed to investigate a case. You will go back to your report time and again to check facts and to try to get ideas to follow up on leads. They're also reviewed by your supervisors and can be considered as far as promotion. Lastly, they are also used, as mentioned before, by attorneys and by judges as the case is prosecuted at trial. Citizens in the community can also obtain and read your police report, which is another reason why you want to have your report come across as a very professional and well-written document. How do you write in active voice? It's actually quite simple. If you write in active voice, the subject of your sentences are the ones performing the action, rather than being on the receiving end of the action. What do I mean by this? Let's take a look at the sentence that I provided in this slide. The suspect waived his Miranda rights. Ask yourself, who is performing the action? Well, the suspect is. He's the one who waived his Miranda rights. What's the subject of this sentence? The subject is the suspect. Therefore, the subject of the sentence, the suspect, performed the action. That sentence, the suspect waived his Miranda rights, is written in the active voice. Just for contrast, I want you to see what that same sentence looks like written in the passive voice. It looks like this. Miranda rights were waived by the suspect. See the difference between the two different types of writing? When you're writing your police report, you should go through it at the end and revise your sentences to try to make them all be written in the active voice. It's very easy, particularly when writing in the past tense, to use the passive voice and to say things like, Miranda rights were waived by the suspect. Again, your writing has more clarity if you use the active voice and state, the suspect waived his Miranda rights. For the last part of this lecture, we are going to cover some grammar. We will begin with the basic parts of speech. Hopefully this is going to be just a refresher from your previous education, but it's always good to revisit this. There are 8 basic parts of speech: nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. You probably all remember the first 6, or maybe even the first 5. The last 2 or 3 are ones that probably need a little bit of a refresher. And in the next 8 slides, we will cover each one in turn. You probably all remember the definition of a noun from elementary school. A noun is a person, place, thing, or action. It's a very simple and straightforward definition, but it really works when you're trying to determine if a word is a noun. Nouns are often separated into common nouns and proper nouns. As I noted on the slide here, a proper noun is simply a specific name of a person, place, or thing. So if you say Fred Smith jumped bail, then Fred Smith is a proper noun. But if you say the suspect jumped bail, then suspect is a common noun. ECPI University would be a proper noun because it's a specific university. The university would be common noun. There's also something called a collective noun, also known as a plural noun, and it's simply when you're naming a group of people or things. So the suspects. Suspects is a collective noun, or victims, if you say the victims, that's also a collective noun. Pronouns go hand in hand with nouns because they are substitutes for nouns. This is pretty straightforward. If you say the suspect stole the purse, then suspect is a noun. It's a common noun. If you say Fred Smith stole the purse, Fred Smith is a noun, and it's a proper noun. But if you say he stole the purse, all you've done is substituted the noun for a pronoun. And he, the pronoun, is the subject of the sentence. There are other pronouns listed on the slide. She, him, their, you, I, etc. Anything that you can substitute for a noun is considered a pronoun. Again, hearkening back to elementary school, I'm sure you all remember that verbs are action words. Verbs can be present or past tense. They also can be considered helping or linking verbs. If you look at the sentence, "The suspect fired a shot and jumped over the fence," the action words in that sentence are fired and jumped. So therefore, fired and jumped are the verbs. Fired and jumped are past tense verbs. If you proceed to say, "He is in the hospital with a broken leg and will be arraigned tomorrow," you actually have two more verbs in that sentence. The verb is, he is in the hospital, is what's called a linking verb. He will be arraigned tomorrow, will is a helping verb. So in the sentence, "The suspect fired a shot and jumped over the fence. He is in the hospital with a broken leg and will be arraigned tomorrow," we have four verbs, actually two sentences. Fired is a verb, and jumped is a verb in that first sentence. Is a linking verb, and will is a helping verb, both in the second sentence.